With 1 week until opening day, we ask, is MLS leveling up in 2025? Which American broad had the best possible weekend? And how did American soccer react to USL's Division 1 announcement? That and more here on Monday's Morning Kickaround. Hello all and welcome to the show. This is Morning Kickaround, where we cover the world's most favorite game from the world's favorite country, coming to you live each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. You may not recognize him. He's got that smoky voice, but how you doing this morning, Mr. Davis?
I got a smoky voice. I feel like, my register is pretty naturally down there anyway, and then you throw in a little dash of the flu or whatever's going around because the whole household has now been smacked by it. Saturday was a non-movement day. You have one of those recently, Robert, where you're like your arm is like this, like I can't. I gotta feed myself.
Well, if you recall,
now.
I did miss 2 episodes of the show last week, so I am fully aware of what being incapacitated means, sir.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that has stricken your house, and I hope that you're on the road to recovery. Are you trending up or down here with your health?
No, I'm better. Saturday was my bad day. It wasn't like a cough or anything. It was just feeling completely drained. Yesterday was better, and now my wife has it on a holiday. She's fortunately not working today because it is a holiday, but the 4-year-old who had already had it, got it first, of course, and has recovered, is now bursting with energy and ready to run around and do everything. So, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Do you have any sort of like leash sort of thing in the house? You can like, tie him to something so he doesn't run away?
Don't feel comfortable with that. Like when back in, is this still a thing? Do people still put their dogs on like dog runs, like with clotheslines and a leash, and they just go back and forth between the 2 poles all day?
Yeah, you got a big yard but no fence. It works out perfectly. But you've never seen kids, they have a leash, you're walking in a big crowd and you got to hold on to them so they don't run away.
No. We went to Spain this past summer, and it was a whole thought process. My wife was a little worried about potential crowds, being in touristy areas. Let's get him a little backpack that also doubles as the leash thing. So it doesn't, he can put the little dinosaur backpack on, and then you have a leash. Guess how many times we used it while we were in Spain?
Once.
Zero times. 0 times. Did not get used at all. Don't ask me why. I don't remember. He was mostly good. We had a stroller. He crashed. It was hot. Whatever. You have a plan and then you don't follow through. But everything's good. He's still here. I didn't lose him in Toledo or whatever. Like, he's still with us.
he came back from vacation, so it all worked out in the end.
That's
You're
right.
feeling a little bit under the weather, but your shirt is very vibrant. You don't get to share your vast collection of soccer shirts on your day job, so tell us what you're wearing here today, Mr. Davis.
Well, again, I think we're doing repeats now, but that's okay because I'm happy to do it until I get some new gear. This is just what's going to happen. This is the Oakland Roots shirt. I think last year they sent me this one. This one is, all that work I'm putting in the gym gets shown off by this shirt. So I'm not trying to be like, this was not, suns out, guns out. It's just, I like this shirt. I put it on today. As you said, it's vibrant. It's picking up my mood is what's happening right now. And the Oakland Roots, their image, their branding is absolutely fantastic. So shout out to the Oakland Roots.
From my view, shoulders looking great once again, so kudos to you on that, Mr. Davis. Exciting news over the weekend. We crashed through the 800 subscriber barrier on YouTube, so thank you to all who have pressed the button and are now subscribed to the Morning Kickaround YouTube channel. Be the very next. Hit that button and then tell your friends and family to be the very next after you. We are on the march to 1,000 subscribers, and we are getting there eventually. Over 800, very exciting stuff. Like and subscribe, like I said, or follow us on social media. Kickaround on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and I think Threads as well. We might be on there as well.
Are we on Threads?
What is a
thread? I don't know.
I think that's the X alternative that's kind of linked in with Instagram.
Oh, okay. All right, we're on Threads. Perfect.
Boom.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I realized that I was clicking through things over the weekend. Well, write us a note, morningkickaround gmail.com. Thanks to anyone who's written a note, and look forward to seeing more of those. And Ko-Fi, the newest addition to our digital repertoire. Like and support us financially. You can do a one-time, buy us a coffee, throw $5 at us, or make a regular monthly donation. It is ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. What was that again? ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. Help us become a sustainable program.
Like you set yourself up there, Rob. That was very well done. That was very well done.
Hey, so, I'm doing the show with you, and, I study you as a soloist, and you often, bounce things off yourself. So I'm trying to learn from the greats. With all that said, after you guys make your donation to the show, help us become a sustainable show at ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. Help us expand the show, keep this thing going, and help us become part of the American soccer conversation. Lots of exciting stuff to cover, new season ahead, USL's announcement, Club World Cup next year. Lots of stuff to cover here, and we want to be around to do it.
Let me make a statement about that, actually, because I recognize that a lot of people found the show recently. I mean, we've had a couple of things that we've done that have kind of resonated a bit in American soccer circles. A lot of people found the show because of our conversation with John Morrissey about USL going for a men's D1 outdoor league. I know the show got posted on the USL subreddit, so shout out to whoever did that. We very much appreciate it. We are going to cover those stories, right? Yeah, we're going to have a dash of European stuff. We're going to be talking MLS. We're going to be doing national team things. We're Americans. We have a big, melting pot of topics that we want to cover, but I'm not sure there's anywhere else because of the end of the United States of Soccer, my old radio show. I'm not sure there's anybody else kind of doing these big picture stories kind of all the way down the tiers of American soccer. I mean, we covered the League for Clubs as well on our channel. If you missed that conversation with, what's his first name? It's Crowley. Dennis Crowley, yes. If you missed our conversation with Dennis Crowley about the League for Clubs, go look for that on the channel. If you're interested in sort of an amateur effort to put together a national footprint of clubs that really are in this because they want to grow soccer, not because they're trying to make a bunch of money, go listen to that. I mean, we've covered the NASL lawsuit, obviously, here on the channel as well with Stephen Bank and some of the aftermath. So I want people to understand. Maybe you didn't know about the United States of Soccer on SiriusXM, which was my old show that covered all this stuff. But regardless, you did or didn't, this is going to be a place for those kind of stories because this is what matters to me as an American soccer person. Like I like MLS. We're going to talk about MLS. I want to talk about the Americans that are flying the flag for the United States abroad. I want to talk about the U.S. men's national team and its fortunes, but I also want to cover stuff that maybe isn't going to hit the mainstream. So hopefully we become that home for those stories here on Morning Kickaround. And again, if you are at all interested in the growth of the game from the ground up, subscribe to the channel and tell somebody.
That's the key. Subscribe, so we can keep on going and cover all those stories that Jason surmised. With all that said, summarized? All right, let's get to our headlines.
Summarized.
Hey, I summarized the word into surmise. All right, Monday's long balls here on Morning Kickaround. Let's go. All right, my name's Robert. He's Jason Davis. Long ball number one, the big headline of Monday morning. Which American had the best weekend abroad? We saw Pulisic on the bench. We saw the Juventus duo go the full 90 in a big win over Table Toppers. Josh Sargent continued his goal-scoring run with a funny little quirk. And we saw the return of Daryl DK. Where should we start with that? There's a lot to cover across the European continent for these Americans abroad.
Do not forget about Paxton Aronson scoring a big goal for his team. It ended up in a draw, but leaped over Richie Ledesma. So again, that's an American-on-American situation. And I believe the man shouted Air Jordan. Paxton Aronson decided to shout Air Jordan into the camera after scoring a goal in the Eredivisie. Like, he's like, I got hops. I can jump. Look at me. I'm Air Jordan. I don't look, as much as it's like Weston McKennie. I'm not taking him for granted. And by the way, he captained Juventus this weekend. I'm not taking it for granted that Weston McKennie is captaining Juve in a game against Inter Milan as Juve tries to climb the table, in a game that they win, all those things. That's important. Obviously, Tim Weah getting regular minutes, even if it's not in the position he would play for the U.S. men's national team. I'm thrilled about that. Pulisic off the bench, but, I think this is about managing things right now for Concacaf at Milan. You don't want to run him into the ground. That is a thing. Josh Sargent, 5 goals in 5 games, I think, is his recent record. He's come back from injury and hit the ground running. He had there was a squirrel. There was a squirrel on the field when he scored the goal for Norwich this weekend. But I don't know how you don't say that the best weekend for any American belonged to Daryl Dike. Not because he scored or he did anything remarkable. I think he picked up a yellow card, was defending more than he was attacking in a game. But he played soccer in a competitive match.
Yeah.
As a professional. That's enough for me. Good for Daryl Dike, Robert.
Yeah, it really is amazing. I mean, like, you just got a feel for the guy who, tearing an Achilles has got to be just a horrific experience, especially for a professional athlete where your body is your tool to make your money. But to have it happen twice to separate Achilles, I don't know if I've even really necessarily heard of that injury repeating, but let alone on both sides. That's just incredible. And it speaks to him to, keep his head down and work to get back from, this is probably, because there was a significant injury before these Achilles. There's at least 3 major injuries for this player.
You would hope that, you would hope, it would be easier to sort of not, okay, this is going to sound weird, but go with me here, right? We're American soccer fans. We're so directly tied in to the fortune of our players, right? We live and die with them. Like there's this parasocial relationship that is happening. They are representing us on these clubs, on these levels, right? And I would love to say that after 30 years of this, or whatever it's been since, we had Ronaldo go to Germany and Tab Ramos in Spain and et cetera, I would love to say that we're over this kind of being super anxious about how our players are doing abroad. Like, Pulisic is doing great at Milan. Juventus has an American captain against Inter. There are Americans all over the place. And it's like, I would just love to say, oh, we're good. Like it's all good. We can just let them be, and we don't have to be like constantly checking in, like it's just some sort of soap opera, and every single time something good or bad happens. But that's not where we are yet. At least not for me, Robert. Maybe other American soccer fans are kind of like, whatever, they're fine. But, of course, it's all tied into the fortunes of our national team. The better our players do in Europe, the better we imagine that our national team's going to be, which hopefully gets us one day to win a World Cup. That's the dream. A men's World Cup. That's the dream. It would be easier if Daryl Dike was kind of a jerk. Or he wasn't working back. Or if he had decided to put his tail between his legs and come back to America and maybe try to catch on in MLS or something like that. It would be easier for us emotionally if Daryl Dike was a bad guy, or not, maybe just not as cool a guy, as fun a guy as he is. But Daryl Dike is awesome. Like, Daryl Dike is so nice and jovial and funny and smart, and I can't connect with a lot of the things he cares about because I'm too old, but I appreciate who Daryl Dike is. And to have him consistently pick up these injuries that keep him out for so long, especially considering we know that when he's on the field, he can be very effective. It just sucks. Like, it just sucks. It's beyond like, oh, he could help the national team if he was playing regularly. It's more like I just want the guy to be healthy for a while.
Yeah, his ascent was so fun to watch, going from college straight into MLS and then getting into the United States men's national team, and then get a bid from an English team all within 18 months. I think he went from college stud to, European pro within a very short period of time, and then has pretty much been sidelined ever since. Great to see the hard-headedness to just, continue to chase the dream at, the highest level is really worth appreciating. And yeah, let's take a moment before we move on, just to appreciate Weston McKennie being captain of Juventus.
Absolutely.
That's a thing.
Yes.
Long ball number 2. MLS is right around the corner, but you know what's even closer? MLS's participation in the Concacaf Champions Cup. MLS teams join the already underway tournament. 2 games tomorrow involving MLS sides, Sporting Kansas City and Miami, and in Colorado and LAFC tomorrow. We should note before we dig into those matchups, probably the most notable part of the competition up until this part is our Canadian friends, Calgary FC beating Pumas.
Yeah.
That was an absolute shocker. But the conversations surrounding, from what I've seen online so far, surrounding this first level of participation for MLS in the CONCACAF Champions Cup is, will we see one and only Leo Messi play in Kansas City on Tuesday night?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't think I have a clear idea about that. I think they're closely watching this in Kansas City, and they've been in the warm-up phase. I know they had a game against Orlando in Tampa, did Inter Miami. They played that wild game out in Vegas. You got kind of, I'm not paying close attention to friendly results in preseason. Like there's a European season happening right now. There's Champions League over there. There's all kinds of stuff going on in the world of football. You have to kind of be maybe MLS fans or fans of these clubs that are very tied into their potential this season are paying attention. Like if you're an Inter Miami fan, you may be paying attention to preseason results. Same thing for Sporting or Colorado or LAFC or whoever else. Real Salt Lake and Seattle also in this tournament, as is Cincinnati. You see them down there. I'm sure all of them are paying attention to their preseason results. I just haven't really is Inter Miami doing X or Y? What is Javier Mascherano doing with his lineup? Like those are the things I've pulled forward here. So I think it's anybody's guess, or certainly I'm not aware of whether or not Lionel Messi is going to have a major role. At the same time, though, of course Inter Miami wants to win that thing. Like, of course they do, right? And they've made their efforts. And I think this is, we got the Club World Cup coming up. Inter Miami got their bid into that, through FIFA's machinations to decide that, you get a spot because you, points. You had the best points. You get in. So that's, there's that too. It'll be a busy season for Inter Miami, just like everybody else. And Lionel Messi is not a spring chicken. So I do think that that's interesting. You mentioned cavalry. Let's make sure I think I got dinged for a mispronunciation last time because I said Calvary instead of cavalry. Yes, I know that's okay. The Canadian side, based in Calgary. Cavalry is based in Calgary. Why do they make it so hard on us, the Canadians? Beating Pumas. Pumas rolled out like a very young squad. That was not the best team Pumas could put out. They played that game in British Columbia because it was too damn cold, or the stadium does not meet requirements up in Calgary. So Calvary had to do it away from home, sort of, in a small venue there in BC, but they get the job done. We had, you see the other results, by the way. Monterrey beat Forge. That's not a surprise. Cruz Azul got a 2-0 win in their first leg. Real Esteli beating Tigres. Now, Tigres will go back home to Monterrey and probably crush Real Esteli. I really have no doubts about that. Cibao, I believe that is a Dominican team. I watched a little bit of that game, actually. For the Dominican Republic, it looked like you would expect it to look from the Dominican Republic. And they drew at Guadalajara. That's a interesting results. Again, going back to Guadalajara, they'll probably get crushed. I don't like that we've got MLS versus MLS at this stage. I would prefer we didn't. It bothers me that we got, 2 matchups of MLS versus MLS? But Real Salt Lake has Herediano of Costa Rica. You have Seattle with Antigua. And then Cincinnati will face off Motagua. Motagua's, I think, Honduran. So, yeah, Vancouver. I forgot about the Whitecaps. They're the Canadian champions. So they get Deportivo Saprissa of Costa Rica as well.
How could you possibly forget Vancouver, Jason?
I know. I forgot about the Caps. I got to remember the Caps.
Yeah, remember the Caps. And then Colorado taking on LAFC as well. Interesting, Tom Bogert and others reporting that LAFC is closing in on Turkish international Unger, who rose to prominence, I think, for Roma, and then is in Turkey. That would be quite the pull for MLS side. 27-year-old international, played at the top levels in Europe. That would be a very exciting addition to the MLS side. Shout outs to the chat. Ronnie, thanks for jumping aboard. We got you in the chat. Thank you so much for the kind words. And then Scott, he's got a question about Pro Rel in the USL, and we will come to that in just a few. But long ball number 3, it was a busy weekend in the world's probably most popular league competition. Americans Adams and Anthony Robinson enjoyed wins, but the headlines probably were the league leaders, Liverpool, and the chasing pack and Arsenal both won. But probably, I think there was the disaster derby was yesterday. Spurs versus Manchester United.
Yeah, the sack race derby, maybe, if you imagine that one of these managers could lose their job because of it. Like, I will say this about the title race. I do think Liverpool's got this thing pretty much locked up. I know that both teams won, and there was a chance maybe that if Arsenal won and Liverpool playing on Sunday, if Liverpool had dropped points, then we would have a title. But it didn't happen, right? I mean, again, you described it. As a Liverpool fan, Rob, you described them as lucky to me today, right? And
yeah, I got to admit, I'm feeling a little nervous because they've been a little bit, just sputtering over the line to get. I mean, they're still getting wins, which is huge, but they're sputtering. Like the penalty that they got was a little bit dubious, and then they were hanging on at the end.
Well, that's how this works, right? Nobody plays a perfect season. There's no such thing. Even the Invincibles probably had a couple of calls go their direction in the era before VAR that you would go back and go, well, actually, so we're not talking about like it just being a walk in the park to win a Premier League title. And as I was going to get to, you're saying Liverpool has scuffled a bit, or maybe they haven't looked great. Well, I will remind you that despite the win that they had against Leicester, and you're not going to get a brace from Mikel Merino every week. Arsenal does not have a center forward, Rob. They just don't have one. When you have to roll out Trossard at center forward, that's a problem for Arsenal Football Club. So I don't think Liverpool has a ton to worry about. 7 points does not seem insurmountable, I guess, but I still can't see Arsenal closing this gap in a meaningful way, at least anytime soon.
I know, but as a Liverpool fan and then as a Lions fan too, I've seen some very promising seasons end up in heartbreak. So just they're looking more human and fallible when they were looking a little bit more bulletproof earlier in the season. That's all. And 2 bad match weeks, and it's a 1 point. It's a 1 point thing, and there's 13 games to go. So that presumes that Arsenal doesn't drop points. And again, Arsenal's a good team, but they do not look like the kind of team historically that is good enough. I mean, I know City was maybe more unstoppable or more complete the last 2 years, obviously with Rodri in the lineup, and now they don't have Rodri in the lineup, and it's whatever. But I can't see it, Rob. I don't know. Maybe I'm jumping to an early conclusion, but I just don't see that Arsenal's got the juice at this point, and I think Liverpool's got enough depth and enough different ways to win games that they will find enough points to win this title. My opinion. Well, I sure hope you're right, Mr. Davis, because that is obviously the desirable outcome from this chair. But they do have a lot of depth, and there's a lot of options. Van Dijk goes down, maybe McAllister goes down, maybe the team doesn't look quite as good, but we shall see. But to focus on the American performance, we'll go to your Fulham. They got the result that they needed. Anthony Robinson played well once again. Do you have hopes that Fulham will continue to get good results and be a top half team by springtime?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the quality is there for them to be top half. I mean, I think that's the thing. We're seeing sort of remarkable seasons from Nottingham Forest, obviously losers on the weekend to my Fulham, but we're seeing remarkable seasons from Nottingham Forest and from Bournemouth, and I know we'll touch on Bournemouth here in a second because of the American influence on that team. City has declined, but it's really hard to imagine them not being top 4 by the end of this. You do have, obviously, Europa League and Conference League spots, but, of course, Chelsea, who's not complete enough to be a title contender, is probably going to end up in a European spot of some kind. And then Newcastle, I'm not ever really sure about Newcastle. They do kind of teeter-totter back and forth. But and again, being ahead of Aston Villa, if you had said, hey, Fulham will be ahead of Aston Villa 25 match days into the season, I'd say, nah, you're crazy. What are you talking about? But there they are. They're a point up on Aston Villa. This feels, and I hate to be like it's not negativity necessarily. I guess it's a realistic approach to this in my mind. This is the high water mark probably for Fulham in terms of where they rank in terms of squad quality and things like that. And I do think that you've got a manager in Marco Silva who's done a really, really good job. And I do think it's also nice that Fulham can boast a positive goal differential. Like that's not a given for a team like that in any given year, and maybe it doesn't hold. But when you're talking about, we know about Spurs and the aberration that is Spurs way down in 12th on plus 12 for the season. Brentford's ticked above 0, so they're plus 1. But to be in the company of Newcastle, Chelsea, Bournemouth, and everybody up the table all the way to Liverpool and Arsenal at the top is pretty cool. I think in terms of what the Liverpool season, the Fulham season looks like. Rob, I got your teams mixed up with mine. The Fulham season looks like right now.
It's kind of funny to hop back to the Man U Tottenham thing real quick. It's funny, we've done a segment about that matchup being the sack race derby, but with a different manager in charge of one of those clubs. We did a Eric Ten Hag and Postecoglou who's going to get sacked first, and then that conversation. We didn't bring up what one of them is going to get sacked, but it's kind of wild that different manager. The second matchup of the league season, and that's still a thing.
A comment on that game and that result and what it might mean. I think it would be absolute insanity for Manchester United to pull the plug on Amorim at this point. You don't have enough, regardless of whether you think he's good enough now, you don't have enough information to make an informed decision on his future. And again, you gave him a bunch of mismatched parts for his idea and said, hey, turn Manchester United back into what Manchester United's supposed to be. And it, I'm not saying it's not his fault on some level, but again, if you said, and he keeps telling us this in his press conferences, I was hired for my idea. Manchester United didn't go and get Ruben Amorim, who was at first like, hey, can I wait out the year and then maybe come in the summer? And they were like, no, you have to come now or you can't come at all. They didn't go to him and say, hey, that thing you've been doing at Sporting where you've been dominating Portugal, can you change everything you do and then come over to United and do something different? That's not how they sold it to him, and it's not what he thought he was going to be doing. So it would be ridiculous to everybody involved, including the fan base, who I know is not happy, I know is demanding more, to say, oh no, Ruben, that thing we told you, yeah, we that's all that was nonsense. You either need to change your tactics dramatically in order to get results now, and let's be honest, the only way to do that is to be a aggressive kind of team that really United fans don't want to see on the field, or what, we fire you? I mean, again, I don't know what the fan base really wants. I know what the supporters really want. I don't know what Ineos really wants.
No. We shall see. And you never want to go to a third manager. A third manager in a season usually spells doom. Anyone that's gone to a third manager is usually in the relegation zone.
That would be the fourth. Let's not.
I forgot about our guy.
That Ruud van Nistelrooy actually had a little bit of success at United. Now it's a disaster at Leicester. I don't know what he was supposed to do really, but it's a disaster at Leicester. So, but that would be 4. I know interims, those managers, the caretakers don't really count in our minds, but they had an opportunity to just say, hey, Ruud, finish out the season. Especially after the first couple results. They could have said, you know what, let's tell Amorim we'll sign him in the summer. Let's give Ruud a chance here to maybe get the spirits up at United. And that they didn't do that, and now the spirits are about as down as they could possibly be.
Yeah, Manchester United sitting in 15th, and they are 12 points ahead of the drop zone. But, I've seen kind of headlines, I don't know if they're tongue-in-cheek or not, saying, the main objective now is to avoid relegation. Obviously it is, but it's hard to believe that they could drop below the likes of Wolves. They're not getting relegated, and they're not being pulled into they're not really going to be pulled into the fight to avoid relegation. I don't see that, but they are not a top half. They're not a top half team. They're just not a top half team, which is insane to think about and what that means. And again, on the other side of it, for Ange, big win.
Does it mean something? Can they build from this? That is the big question.
And it's wild that if you put their squad side by side, you'd probably pick more Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth players than you would Manchester United players at this point of the season.
Meanwhile,
25 matches in.
Meanwhile, Anthony is tearing up Spain at Real Betis at the moment.
That is, I actually saw some of those highlights. He's scored 4 goals in 5 games or something like that for Betis, which is just insane. Which is just like, you just left a terrible situation. You are not, in fact, a terrible player. You've been the victim of memes relentlessly for the last year plus, and kudos to him. Way to have an individual bounce back and not get down on yourself and go to a new team and actually say, it was them, not me. I am a good player. That does it for long balls here. We're going to jump into some segments. We're going to talk USL's D1 announcement and the 30th season of MLS ahead. But before we do, click that subscribe button. Morning Kickaround on YouTube.com. We crashed through the 800 follower or subscriber mark over the weekend, and help us be the next to help us towards the 1,000 mark. And once you do, tell your friend to be the very next one after you to hit that button. Follow us along on social media, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Or write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. And if you've got a few extra bucks, buy us a coffee, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. One-time donation, or even have a regularly scheduled one to help us grow and sustain this program. We're going to take a quick break. Come right back in about 25 seconds for today's hot topic here on Morning Kickaround. Hot topic on Morning Kickaround today is February 17th, just a few days after the big announcement. United Soccer Leagues, surprised American soccer on Thursday afternoon with news saying they are going to progress. They are looking into starting a brand new league at the Division I level to, be in direct competition with Major League Soccer for the top division in the United States. There was plenty of coverage, plenty of reaction within the American soccer world. I'd say the mainstream outlets, there was an article in Forbes, the Glazo Network, all of them were covering it. I thought very respectfully, not too much haughtiness, and kind of everyone, from what I saw, I mean, obviously there was some conflicting reactions, but, pretty big reaction considering this was an announcement coming from a minor league outfit.
Well, I mean, I think that's all to be expected. I mean, this is what American soccer people kind of live for, is the messiness, the chaos. We're normalized to this kind of stuff, right? We made all the soccer wars jokes last week because they speak to our experience in this game. If you've been around long enough, you've seen this story play out before. Now, I will say it's possible that this is a different kind of soccer wars. Maybe it's not a war at all. Maybe it's not a direct challenge. I've seen it framed that way, right? And shout out to, the Cooligans, for example, who did a video on USL making this announcement. How is this going to be a challenge to MLS? And we're all trying to get clicks, by the way. Like, let's just acknowledge we're all trying to get our clicks. We're all trying to get our views. Sometimes the headline needs to be sensational to grab attention. I don't think we did that, right? Not out of any high-mindedness, just it wasn't the framing that we thought about at the time. Because, in part, and I'll bring this up, this is from you, and USL ain't crazy enough to be in direct competition with MLS. These two leagues will coexist. I do think there's a little naivete involved in that, Ewan. No offense. Like, I'm not saying that you're wrong exactly. I think there is. I don't know that USL is going into this charging ahead thinking, yeah, we're going to take down MLS, because that is the way the NASL, or at least some people in the NASL at the time, that they wanted to get D1 status. That obviously led to the lawsuit and everything that's been happening recently with the completion of that and the demise of NASL. There was a sense of that, right? People could tell you the stories of Bill Peterson and his tenure as NASL commissioner and how that went down. I do think we hope, though, that this is different. And I think, as we said last week, as we covered this ourselves and with John Morrissey, USL can apply for this. If they get all their ducks in a row and they meet all their requirements, they can apply for this and not have it be about challenging MLS, which is a weird kind of mental leap you have to make, because no other country in the world, as far as I'm aware, has 2 first division leagues. Rob, there isn't any.
In the Forbes article that I read over the weekend, they were talking about how, merger is likely the most favorable outcome in here. But but not to derail it, but they were saying that there is precedent in like the 70s in Brazil. There was conflicting Division I leagues, but that was a little bit different because they were regionalized at that point. So they were Division I, but in different regions, and then they merged. But the Forbes thing was, they were trying to harken back to the ABA, and then the when the NFL came together. And you're squinting. You don't necessarily think that might not be apples to apples here.
No, I don't think it is. And Ian Quillen wrote that piece at Forbes. It's fine. It makes sense to go back to American sports history and point to the ABA and the AFL and even hockey. I think the WHL or something popped up, and there was like, oh, we'll incorporate a couple of your teams. It wasn't all the teams, right? But it was a couple of the teams. Those direct challenges have forced the status quo league, the established league, to respond. It's possible that is the USL play, but it's also worth thinking that, or we're thinking about how the USL may be thinking about this approach in multiple different kind of possibilities, right? This is almost like a multiverse kind of option. Like, in this moment, we do this thing, and this thing could happen, or this other thing could happen, or this other thing could happen, and they're all good for us, right? Oh, is the strategy specifically to try to get bought out by MLS, or is the strategy, we'll do this? Will become more attractive to investors, as Harry has already said, and I'll put it back up here again, about voting power in U.S. soccer and getting bids to the Concacaf Champions Cup now. Like, it could be that could be the ends itself, regardless of whether or not you get bought out by MLS. Again, it might not be direct competition with MLS. I mean, I think there is sort of an unknowable part of this. Now, we did conjecture last week, and I did this on the Best Soccer Show as well when I talked to Jonathan Tannenwald about it. Please go support the Best Soccer Show. I know I do a lot of things, but that's another show I do. You can go find it on YouTube and on podcast, the Best Soccer Show. To me, this feels like a positioning thing, right? This is USL saying we're going to put ourselves in a position to be more attractive to outside investment, whether that's a purchase, could be by MLS, could be by private equity, right? We're going to make ourselves more attractive. We're going to do everything we can, right? There are options here for USL. Because U.S. Soccer leaves the door open for 2 Division I leagues, why wouldn't you go after it if you think you can check all the boxes? And again, with John Morrissey last week, we pondered checking all the boxes, Rob.
Yeah, so there's the framing of a possible merger, but there's also, like, it almost might be as a way to just bring in more investment. Like, you could say, when you're sitting down for that sponsorship pitch, we're the top division. When you're trying to get a new player, you can say we were top division. And then, to Harry's point, we have access to the Concacaf Champions Cup. We have the opportunity to access a continental competition, thus giving players and coaches more possibilities to display their qualities, skills, and maybe even a bigger move could be in their future. Just more eyeballs on you, just with that moniker there. But if we're gonna dip into the comments from our videos from last week, that kind of the various different reactions were displayed in the comments section. From I like the reaction. I think Charlie Davis on Galazzo expressed this. But there is a comment here from Over Analyzing Everything. MLS is far too expensive for any city to join now. Now is the time to do it. And I like that this came up, that this might be the opportunity for, teams are bidding to become a Major League Soccer franchise, right? But not every single one gets it. But that doesn't mean the interest just goes away, right? So This gives opportunity for teams that don't want to be minor league, but want their city and their club to be at the quote unquote table at the top division level?
Yeah, I mean, look, perception is a lot of this, and I do think that no matter what USL does or how they move forward or what markets or teams they can attract to a D1 league, they will have an issue of looking like second fiddle to Major League Soccer. That's not something they can fix overnight.
No.
But if you get that label, right, if you get official recognition as a D1 league, certainly that could be a selling point in some quarters. Right? It doesn't mean it fixes all your problems or suddenly you are elite. And again, I think there's going to be a visual problem here for USL. Right? We talked a lot about stadiums last week. Stadiums are a major barrier to sort of looking big time in Major League. And it took MLS 20 years, 25 years before they got to a point where most of their teams were playing in appropriate venues that look good on television and help sell the product. And even now, MLS is struggling to sell their product in some ways because the world has changed dramatically when it comes to that, right? The TV is part of the deal here because it's been noted that this is all timed out. The announcement of we're going to launch a D1 league in 2027-28. When does the USL television deal expire? 2027. So if you are able to put together a D1 league and then go back to the bargaining table or open up your bidding for TV partners and say, we have a D1 league, and guess what? That means opportunities to play in Concacaf, or that means, we get to say we're first division in America. Maybe that makes it more attractive. I mean, again, it's sort of a why wouldn't you do it kind of thing. Like it's difficult. I'm not saying this is going to be easy for USL to pull off, but it's like if the option is there. And again, U.S. Soccer is sort of boxed in by antitrust law and can't prevent you from doing it as long as you meet their standards, which, again, could be challenged and waivers could be given. Why wouldn't you take a swing at this? I said on Blue Sky last week when this broke, I said, this relates to my theory about how because culturally we don't all pull in one direction in this sport because we don't have 150 years behind us, like which is pushing, like, in Germany, Spain, Italy, whatever, England, the history is pushing everybody forward. And you really don't want to go and mess with the history too much. Like, could you imagine somebody in England going, I don't like any of this football league stuff. I'm going to start my own competition. I'm going to start my own league. It's impossible to imagine. Because, well, for one, the FA is much stronger there than U.S. Soccer is here. And again, I come back to antitrust law as a major reason why. But also because it just you would be rocking the boat in a way no one would appreciate. No one would say, good for you, launching your own football league. They'd go, what the hell are you doing? This is messing with everything. Here you can launch whatever you want to launch, and people go, good for you. You're fighting the powers that be and the status quo and all those bad people who sit in their ivory towers in New York or now Atlanta or whatever and dictate how we run our football. Good for you. Right, this is just a matter of how history is applied differently. We don't have enough of it to push us forward together or guardrails because of it. There are no guardrails in American soccer, largely, Robert. They're very few. One of them is the professional league standards, and that's pretty weak when you consider what it's like in other countries. So why wouldn't you do this? I don't blame USL as much as I would blame MLS for trying to make sure that they have control of the top division soccer market, however they respond.
Yeah, I asked John Morrissey on Friday, is this to make this happen? Would USSF have to make, huge amount of waivers to, get folks over the line or get clubs over the line to meet these standards? Or would, the pro league standards need to be changed, quite a bit?
There's always possible. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to switch that. It's always possible. I was going to pull up the pro league standards, but it's always possible that U.S. Soccer goes back to the drawing board on the professional league standards. I believe those standards are at least 10 years old, if not more, at this point. It's always possible they go back. Now, that process, just like any administrative organization, you got to have a committee who does recommendations, and then it gets reviewed, and then somebody says, let's take it to the board, and then they've got to approve it, and all those things. So it's always possible that those get changed. I guess it's eye of the beholder stuff, whether they're too difficult now, Rob, or the bar is too high. Like, 75% of your teams have to be in 1 million plus markets. You have to be in 3 time zones. You have to have stadiums of 15,000 plus, right? Like who gets to decide whether those are too stringent or not?
Yeah, not every city or club is lucky enough. Like Detroit City FC got pretty fortunate that there was what would you call it? A silent investor that came in purely to help them meet those PLS standards to become a USL championship team. Not every club is fortunate enough to have that, and that's very restrictive. Yeah.
Yeah, let me highlight this comment here from Jay. He said it would be a game changer if USL allows community club ownership like the Green Bay Packers and parts of the world. As things stand, they do not allow community club ownership or even partial, as clubs like Detroit City FC and Chattanooga had to give up theirs to join in USL. That needs to change if USL ever wants to be a true alternative to MLS and have pro rel. There's too many self-interested rich people in this country that want involvement in club ownership with no real commitment to the city they chose. By allowing community club ownership, you'll be leaving it up to the communities to build their stadiums and academies, which they are capable of doing since billionaire franchise owners rely on communities to build their own billion-dollar stadiums anyway. All right, there's a couple things missing here. It's a good comment, right? And we did have this come up a little bit with John Morrissey last week. And I think I referenced a conversation on Blue Sky that I had with Peter Wilt. And I really want to get Peter on the show, so let's make a note. Somebody write down Peter Wilt, morning Kickaround. Peter is a very, very, very vocal advocate for community ownership.
Yeah.
And when the NASL lawsuit was coming to a close, he was suggesting that if the NASL won, that it would undermine PLS and open the door to community ownership. Now, I had a little back and forth with Peter because I didn't think that was fundamentally at play in the lawsuit, as I understood it. Not being a lawyer, but as I understood it. Now, he said it would matter sort of in perception if U.S. Soccer lost that to NASL, because then it would require at least a hard look at the PLS. Obviously, that didn't happen. U.S. Soccer won the lawsuit. NASL did not. So that the review of PLS and whether it can open the door to things like community ownership did not happen from the lawsuit. There will have to be another mechanism. It is not up, as Jay has described, USL needs to do this, USL. It is not up to USL. It's not. It's up to the professional league standards. It's up to U.S. Soccer, whether they allow for clubs to be owned communally rather than or have one individual of a certain net worth. And just to remind everybody, the reason U.S. Soccer put that into the PLS was because too many clubs were coming and going, and they wanted to make sure that there was somebody who could eat some losses, because running a professional soccer club in America is very difficult. Teams lose money. By the way, that's not even unusual to American soccer. Teams lose money. It's just a part of the life of a soccer club in 2025, right? Unless you are bringing in billions of dollars of revenue, lots of clubs struggle. So you want to have somebody who can eat some of the losses. And if you have somebody with a $20 million net worth running a club in the second division level, you think, okay, they can eat losses for a while. The club won't come and go like that. It's still not even really that strong of a guard against the death of clubs, Robert. So, I mean, again, these are all things connected to how we think about this evolution, and I guess this decision by USL. But there are still lots of things between this and that before we can even imagine community club ownership and things like it.
Yeah, long way to go to see if this is a reality. I mean, they're planning this for 27, 28, so still a few years of runway to get some ducks in a row. And then just kind of as a final note, which of these pro league standards do you think is the most prohibitive? In my mind, I mean, we're talking size of stadium, almost no stadiums that meets those standards. And then we already talked about the wealthy benefactor that has to hit pretty high amounts of net wealth to qualify. And then you have the time zone. So you truly have to be scattered across the country. Of those, which one do you think, kind of opens the door, like makes it less gatekeepy and more, actual guidelines that help sustainability? Which one of those is most preventative, do you think?
It's just the 15,000 seat capacity stadium. It is that. And the other thing about this is, I'm not blaming USL, but it is interesting to consider that USL seems to be putting aside its push to put its teams in soccer-specific buildings, club-owned buildings, club-controlled buildings, right? Because that was the major thing. Not that long ago, people remember this, right? That USL, when Jake Edwards was there, we're talking about we want to be able to like create a 10,000 seat. I think 10,000 was their number. 10,000 seat stadiums for everybody. We want everybody to be in their own 10,000 seat, at least, at minimum, soccer stadium. We don't want our teams to be playing in minor league baseball venues. We don't want our teams playing in cavernous football stadiums, high school venues. We want our teams playing in soccer stadiums. And this comes back again to the perception of what you are as a league. If you have your own stadiums, you feel like you're much more solid and stable. I've been, for years before MLS was able to get all their stadiums built, I talked about part of the problem with the NASL 1.0 was there were no roots in any community. Those teams could pick up and leave because all they had was a lease in a big NFL venue. So they could just go move and sign another one. You are not tied to your community until there's a building with your name on it.
Right.
The building has your name on it. You feel like you're part, and the people will perceive you as part of the community. Oh, there's a soccer team here? Yeah, they have their own stadium? No. Well, then who cares? They're not really part of our community, or they could move at any time, or I shouldn't pay. I'm not driving down the freeway every day seeing their name on the building. Now you are. That makes a big difference in how people perceive clubs as part of their communities. And why it's even more criminal anytime there's a threat of a relocation or a team does relocate. So USL has been working towards this. Right now, I do think it was a little bit pie in the sky. I think they would probably admit that internally, to have some sort of like, let's create a sort of cookie cutter stadium that teams can build all over the country. Find ways to finance and build them. But that was an admirable goal because it was important for USL clubs in order to be entrenched and tied to their communities to have their own buildings. And revenue is a major part of that too, right? Just from a business standpoint, if you control the building, you control the revenue. It's much better business-wise to have that. So is this USL moving away from that ideal, Robert? Because they're saying, well, we want to be D1 for a lot of these teams. That means 15,000 seat stadiums. Building a 15,000 seat stadium is more difficult than building a 10,000 seat stadium, and we haven't even gotten that done in most places. We still mostly have leases in ill-fitting stadiums. So if you're going to meet the professional league standard for 15,000 seat stadiums, you're going to have to sign leases in buildings that are not made for soccer, Robert. It's just a fact of life.
I think it goes hand in hand, to be honest, Jason. I think, we talked in a segment last week that there's a lot of stadiums in the works. The USL CEO is like the chief real estate officer, so still in their minds, and it's definitely going to have to be a thing to, I think it's both. I mean, they're going for this D1, but also building stadiums to then try to fill in compliance. But
yeah, look. Just real quick, because Ewan's in here. Great comments from Ewan. Thank you very much for being here. The push for soccer-specific stadiums has been even stronger. 8 teams are reported to have top-quality stadiums by 2027 and later. All right, again, we're still far enough down the road from those buildings opening that it's until you see them. Like this is my theory. Until people are kicking a soccer ball in a game on those fields, they don't really exist. You should not count on them happening for sure. But obviously admirable goals exist. And you and I went through some of the projects that are kind of percolating.
Yeah.
There are shovels in the ground in a couple of places, but in some places there aren't. It is just literally concepts of they have concepts of a plan, is what I'm saying, in for soccer-specific stadiums in a lot of places.
This conversation will continue, I'm sure, and we'll follow this here on Morning Kickaround. And if you want to be in on this, be the next to subscribe. We went past 800 subscribers on the Morning Kickaround YouTube, so be the very best and next subscriber to the channel, and tell your besties to do the same. Be the join the movement, join Morning Kickaround, subscribe, and help us hit 1,000 subscribers. Follow us along on social media at mkickaround, and write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. And if you are able to, we would love it if you sent us a little change for a coffee, perhaps make a regular donation, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. We'll take a breath and we'll come right back with today's big question here on Morning Kickaround. Monday morning, the big question. We are just under a week away from Major League Soccer kicking off their 2025 season, the 30th Major League Soccer season. We've seen an increase of international transfers, and the level of the players coming in has increased. MLS seems like they're joining the world ecosystem on transfers. They have cash for trades. There's competition within the league for players. It seems like times are a-changing. Jason, big question of the day.
Yeah.
Will we see Major League Soccer level up the quality of play in 2025?
Yes. I think the quality of play has been leveling up consistently for the last 10, 15 years at the very least. And I mean, you could argue, go all the way back to Beckham and say it started leveling up there. It took a little while before the league committed truly to paying competitive salaries in a lot of cases. One thing that I think is tough for us as American soccer fans and Americans and sports fans as we watch this league grow is we're naturally impatient, right?
Yeah.
We want to see the league take big steps and big leaps. We're used to American companies, businesses, concerns sort of having financial power and then exercising it in a way that MLS has been a little less interested in doing, I suppose, is the way to look at it. I mean, again, Major League Soccer, I don't think is like so strong financially that you could say, oh, they're not using what they've got. The league has taken steps. The league has moved forward. It just feels like they could do more. And we, of course, watch as Americans because we're spoiled and we have access to pretty much every kind of football, soccer, calcio out there.
Yeah.
We're watching the Premier League every weekend going, why not us? No, it's obviously naive and premature to think that MLS could compete with the Premier League in any realistic way anytime soon. But we at least want to see the league take steps in that direction. But of course, remember, like outside of the top 5 leagues, and even if you go down the table in a lot of those leagues outside of England, MLS is competitive in terms of the money that they spend on transfers, in terms of some of the money that they pay in salaries. I mean, they might not have the same level throughout their roster, right? MLS is still a league where guys 1 through 10, 1 through 12 are getting paid pretty well, and then there's a group of players who are not paid as well. So that talent disparity as reflected by salary still exists on some level, even though it's started to get closer together. But yeah, I mean, there aren't that many clubs in the world spending $10 million on transfers. We just happen to see all of them because they all play in the top 5. We compare MLS to those leagues rather than compare them, say, Belgium or I don't even know, Rob. Think the Portuguese clubs aren't spending $10 million on players. They're buying players out of Brazil for $3 million and $4 million and then selling them for $50 later on. It's what they do.
Oh, you're catching some flack in the chat area saying he looks better in that jersey than you do.
Yeah, okay. All right, man. All right. I'll take that as a personal challenge. I'll get back in the weight room. All right.
Yeah, we shall see. But as far as Major League Soccer, to your point, yeah, not many leagues are throwing around the multi-million-dollar deals like we see in the very top levels.
And we should. I'm not saying that means we should be satisfied. By the way, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we just have to keep some perspective as we watch MLS grow. I still want the league to do more, right? I still want them to take some of the training wheels off. But the argument is out there right now that MLS has crested another hill and has leveled up. And if we're going to use software shorthand, that there is a new version of MLS out there. Now, Rob is shaking his head because he wants to do like college football conference comparisons is what you want to do.
Yeah, I don't want to use the software. I'm not into the tech comparisons. Because so we've brought it up, so I'll dive in. So when folks ask me about Major League Soccer and what's the deal with that, so to speak, I kind of draw the line to MLS. I compare it to the MAC in football, the Mid-American Conference. For those who don't know, that's in the middle. It's kind of odd because there are higher level players that kind of drop in, and then there's some guys that are just good at the sport, but not athletic superstars in the mix. And there are times where you could see some highlights, some very entertaining moments, but they're usually because of an oddity or some sort of kind of a chaos moment, not necessarily a front to back quality. And so if Major League Soccer is leveling up and it was the MAC, what would be the next step to compare it to?
How Midwestern of you to say the MAC, Mid-American Conference, with schools like Central Michigan University and the University of Toledo and things like that. Ohio and Michigan heavily represented in the MAC. I have a little bit less of a grasp on this. NIL has changed things, right, a little bit in terms of college football. But I think, look, the Premier League is the SEC, right?
Yeah,
Premier League is the SEC. And then you can get into an argument about the Bundesliga is the Big Ten, or maybe La Liga is the Big Ten, maybe Serie A is the Big Ten, right? You know who the power conferences are, right? And I know the Pac-12 has collapsed, so that kind of screws things up a little bit. But there's the what is it? The AAC? Do you know that one?
The Atlantic Athletic Conference, yeah.
American Athletic Conference, and that has let's see, in terms of football,
there's a couple big hitters in there, but a lot of so teams. I mean, Clemson probably the biggest team in that division, right? And then Florida State.
That's the ACC, Rob.
Oh, okay. Egg on my face there.
Yeah, that's the ACC. That's a bigger level. I mean, the ACC is an interesting one because there are some really big schools that are suffering through dark times right now. Florida State being one of them. Last year, I think they had a good year and missed the playoff. I'm not sure where they were this year, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm confusing Florida and Florida State. But the ACC is an interesting one because, yeah, they've got Syracuse. I think Notre Dame plays in other sports, but not in football. That doesn't really. Miami, the Canes, the Hurricanes. That's the ACC. Is MLS on that level? I think that's even too high. I think that's too high, Rob. I think that's so. The AAC is schools like Rice and Temple and Tulane and North Texas. Memphis.
I think that's a downgrade from the MAC, to be honest.
But no, Memphis had a really good year. I think there are schools in that conference that are better than any MAC school. That would be my state. Now, there's also Conference USA. Do you know about Conference USA?
Yeah, that was what I thought would kind of be the step up a little bit. Is Conference USA? It's one step higher in the mid-major. I think MAC is considered a mid-major conference, and I would say Conference USA is probably one rung up the ladder there.
Okay, so Conference USA, Division I football, right? So TCU, who else is in this? I mean, there are some schools that only play basketball, so it's tougher for me, as because basketball is a little bit different of a. I don't know, maybe not. Old Conference USA, maybe not now. Maybe old Big East football, which I don't think Big East football exists anymore, right?
Yeah, it is. College football is very, very messy now, so it's not as apples to apples as it could be. But I think that maybe, hopefully, to answer this question, is MLS leveling up? What would be some of the indicators of more thorough quality? Is it the top end, or is it like maybe the lower MLS teams when they play each other? Those are more entertaining and engaging games.
Well, okay, look, so obviously one of the things here is that MLS is more competitive top to bottom than most of those leagues that we consider big-time leagues. I mean, obviously the Premier League is interesting as an example of parity, but it's parity built on financial strength. I saw a piece today, it was talking about Manchester United. I think it was Henry Bushnell writing at Yahoo, very good writer, and he was pointing out that the problem for a team like Manchester United is that everybody in the Premier League has money.
Yeah.
Right?
Luton makes more money than the Italian champions.
That's right. Everybody in the Premier League has money, and so it creates this very difficult middle. You get punished for mediocrity in a way that maybe you wouldn't get punished for mediocrity if you were a big club suffering through a different kind of, through a bad season in a different league. So that's the problem for Manchester United. Major League Soccer is, there are parity guardrails. There are things that force parity on clubs. But there's obviously now, as we get deeper into 30 years, the 30th year of MLS, sort of there are some differentiators that are coming to the fore that are beyond just like, did you hire the right coach, right? Or did you draft well? And I think that, we may not see a big stretching of the haves and the have-nots in MLS. Look what LA Galaxy had to do this offseason with their roster because they won a championship. Everybody asked for more money. They couldn't fit everybody under the budget. They had to make moves that nobody really loves. So I think that, when you talk about like comparing MLS to some other sport, like it's really, you look for the sport, look for the conference where everybody can beat everybody else. That to me is the thing about MLS.
Yep, we shall see. Opening day Saturday. Are you ready for 10 months of Major League Soccer starting on Saturday?
I'm always ready. This is the thing about choosing this sport. There is no off season. There's no break. We don't. My wife's like, oh, when does things slow down? Never. They never slow down. If it's not European season, it's MLS or it's the summer tournaments or whatever's happening. So I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, that does it for Mondays. Whew, couldn't wait. I can't wait for Friday, I guess. But that is Monday's morning Kickaround. Thank you for tuning in. Like and subscribe to the channels. We surpassed 800 on our way to 1,000. So be the next to do so. Follow us on social media at @mkickaround and write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to support with a little bit of pocket change, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround for one time or a regular donation. All right, your Monday morning's been kicked. We will see you next on Wednesday. Until then, enjoy your soccer.